The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of podcasting excellence on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us for another episode of Music Weekly. We are back with episode number 44 of Music Weekly, episode number 120 of the Nerdcast Empire. It is kind of crazy how quickly these episodes have ticked away, but we are back with another great week of music, or it's a solid week of music. We found some good stuff out there, and we'll share that with you over the next hour or so. We'll talk some news headlines as well, and then, of course, we will go into the vault to talk about some of the classic albums that you need to check out here on the Nerdcast Empire. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. It is going. Maybe a little more of a challenging week this week. There was some good stuff out there, and quite a few things that I thought checked a lot of the boxes I'm looking for, but then had something that I just didn't quite click with me. But I did find a couple things that I really, really enjoyed, and excited to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think there was definitely some good stuff there. Kind of had to dig to find it this week, I feel like, but we were able to do that. Chris joining us in the chat, holding down the chat part of it, and we've had some people join our Discord, so I wanted to post that right away. Join the Discord. That link is good for 7 days, I believe, and then you'll have to wait till I post a new link, but we're going to do a lot of the conversation stuff in the Discord. That's a good place to find out when we're streaming, if we add any streams. Yes, for sure. But you'll definitely want to check it out there, and a lot of music news, anime news, wrestling news as well in the Discord, so make sure you head on over there and join the Discord. Let's get to some news headlines, and normally our news headlines are just articles, but we are actually starting off with a new release that we could talk about in a couple weeks, and we'll probably briefly mention it again, but because this is a band that obviously we think pretty highly of, we're going to go ahead and get this out of the way today, and that is the new release from Helloween. We got a lot of PR this week about the new live album, Live at Budokan, which came out on Friday. Obviously, Helloween has reformed over the past few years into this mega Helloween that basically has anybody and everybody that you would want, or at least almost everybody, I would think, involved in it. And they now have released this live album, which will include a DVD Blu-ray option as well. Obviously, these guys are amazing, and I don't know if you had the chance to check out a whole lot of this yet, but I think it's one that we both will want to check out if you haven't had a chance to listen to any of it yet.
Yeah, I have it on order. We'll see when I get it. I'll definitely take a deep dive into it. The company that the album's being sold through, Reigning Phoenix Music, they have a YouTube channel where they actually have a couple videos from the performance uploaded. One that really stuck out to me was the video for the song Forever and One, which was originally from the 1996 album The Time of the Oath, which was an Andy Darris album with Helloween. But he and Michael Kiske do this really cool duet thing on it. It's a slower song, but man, it sounds amazing. So if that's any indication of what the remainder of the live experience is going to be, I'll definitely be excited to hear it.
Raging Phoenix Records, one of the record labels that have put us on a mailing list, so we get a lot of emails from them.
Raining Phoenix?
Raining Phoenix, excuse me. We get a lot of emails from them, so that was kind of what put this in front of me this week. But obviously, as I say a lot, when you're a fan of this podcast, if you haven't checked out Helloween, you need to check them out. And if you are a fan of Helloween, you probably, like Mike, already have it on order and want to get this into your hands very soon. But it's exciting to see them, continue to do awesome things. And, it's they've been through a lot as a band over the years, and have kind of found their way back around. And because of that, I think it's just exciting to see where they're going to go from here and what cool music we can expect from them in 2025. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that, and we'll get a little more of a detailed review of it when Mike gets a chance to listen to the full album once it comes in. And it probably will coincide with our episode that'll cover the music from December the 13th, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks. So make sure you tune in for that coming up a couple weeks from now.
Just real quick
Yeah.
about Reigning Phoenix Music, just looking at their artist roster, quite a few bands that I would definitely think we would talk about or we'd be familiar with. Kerry King, Amorphous, Angra. Let's see what else we have. Halloween, obviously. Jag Panzer, Lordy, Orden Ogan, Primal Fear, Riot 5, Sebastian Bach, Sonata Arctica. So yeah, I mean that's quite a lot going on over there. So that's really cool.
I imagine all the times we've talked about Sonata Arctica is probably how we ended up on the mailing list in the first place.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
they keep tagging this band. Maybe we should put them on an email chain. But yeah, excited to see what this sounds like. The full release. Definitely check that out if you're a fan of Halloween. A couple other interesting stories. Nothing too serious, but do want to share this one that came across Blabbermouth, and it was something that comes out every year from an entity called Polestar that basically tallies all of the concert information from the entire year, live industry data, and will basically put out a list of the top drawing artists, both domestically and worldwide. This kind of got Blabbermouth's attention because Metallica grossed $179.4 million, ended up number 9 on the list worldwide. But there's a lot of acts on there that, I don't know that I would go see, but obviously they're doing pretty well for themselves. Not a surprise to see Taylor Swift at number 1. She just wrapped up her big tour. But you've got Coldplay, Pink, Luis Miguel, Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band, the Rolling Stones, Bad Bunny, Zach Bryan, Metallica, and Madonna, amazingly enough, still in at the top 10. And, there's two thoughts of mine. Number one, obviously, all these acts are doing really, really well. But number two, it's kind of a thing like we talk about in the wrestling world when we talk about how WWE touts gates instead of attendance necessarily because the tickets are so high that you don't have to sell out every house. Now, some of these artists obviously are selling out the houses, but at the same time, we just did the story a couple weeks ago about, the fees paid to some of these bands up front just to play before there's ever one ticket sold for the event. So you have to wonder how much of this money is money that they were going to make whether anybody walks in the door or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of makes it funny, too, when you talk about Metallica grossing $180 million over 24 concerts. When we talk about that festival that was canceled where they were promised $5 million. That's kind of a drop in the bucket compared to what they would typically end up with for a concert.
Right. And I don't know if the $5 million was just an upfront and then they were going to make
I would assume
X amount of money on top of that, or does it include merch? Does it include?
But it also sounded like for that festival the margins were so razor thin. Where would that have money come from?
Great question. I mean, other than maybe their own merch and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. But the other thing that was really interesting to me about this list is the North American chart. Number 1 is the Rolling Stones, which is kind of wild. Followed by Bad Bunny, Zach Bryan, Luke Combs, Luis Miguel, Kenny Chesney, Pink, Madonna, Aventura, and Taylor Swift comes in at number 10 in the North American version of that. Of course, obviously she makes a lot of money worldwide, but the Rolling Stones, those guys are all ancient. How are they still? I get it because Stones fans love the Rolling Stones and they will see them infinite amount of times. But that's amazing to me that they're number 1.
I almost think it's a crime in a way that a band can rake in that much money so far removed from their prime.
Yeah.
If they were doing those kind of numbers in the 70s, I would get it.
Sure.
I mean, obviously adjusted for inflation to now standards, but when I see a legacy band like that, I'm always happy that when they sound, like they still got it essentially. So it's just hard to imagine that Rolling Stones experience is the same as it would have been 30 or 40 years ago.
No, it couldn't be. It's just not possible. The question is, what are they charging for tickets, and what does that experience look like? What are you getting for whatever money you're paying for these tickets? Because clearly people are still flocking to see them. And so they must be okay because, I mean, this is an era where word travels fast. And if a live show is bad, everybody's going to hear about it. It's going to be on Blabbermouth probably. We're going to find out what Corey Taylor thinks of the Rolling Stones or Chris Jericho. Like
Corey Taylor's pretty positive about most things, so
it'd be fine. It'd be no problem. But yeah, the whole thing was just. I just have to imagine some of these bands that we talk about week in and week out. Look at these numbers and just think they're playing a different game than us.
Yeah,
like, they're
absolutely. I mean, we just heard just this past week or so that Category 7, the super group that John Bush is a part of, had to cancel their tour because they weren't moving enough tickets. It's like, first off, where's the promotion? Is that part of the issue? Or do they just not have a vehicle behind them that's pushing them like that? Or is it truly a matter of fans are just so much creatures of habit, they would rather see the same act over and over again than take a chance on something that is less familiar?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly something to that because you know what you're going to get. And with a super group, like what songs are they going to play? Are they going to play songs from the bands they were in? Or are they going to just play new stuff? And then it's like, now you're a new band potentially if you're not going to play stuff where these guys come from. So do you like their new stuff enough to go buy tickets? Like, I didn't even know they existed until I saw the story about them canceling. I'm sure you probably did because you're more in tune to that. But
they were on our list a few months ago.
So clearly they didn't even stand out to the point where I remember that they were on there.
Yeah.
Like, which is probably part of the reason why tickets aren't moving too well. But yeah, it's, and again, we talked about that festival a couple of weeks ago that so many of these bands were counting on that money and then they canceled it. So it's just it's a crazy world that these other acts live in. That they just we'll just tour and we're going to make so much money and then we'll just make another album. We'll make even more money, and these other bands are grinding away just trying to stay alive.
It would be interesting if we were to look up and find if the Stones even have any upcoming shows, what the average ticket price to see the Rolling Stones is, and what kind of concert experience you could create using that money seeing bands that aren't charging nearly as much. Because I feel like you could come out way ahead by seeing maybe less legendary, I suppose, bands and getting a lot more music for your money and just overall a better time.
The crazy thing is, according to their website, they only toured in April, May, and June this year.
Wow.
Now, they did stadiums. These are all football stadiums. Sure. But still, they did 7 dates in June, 7 dates in May, 1 date in April. So 15 dates.
Wow.
And let's see. Just curious. Real quick. Pit tickets to Denver were $550 face with a $110 service fee.
The service fees. Man.
Yeah.
Why should a service fee be any higher regardless? Like, shouldn't it be the same amount no matter how much the ticket cost is?
The process of me getting this ticket is exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, there's no difference.
Because you're not paying a $110 service charge on $50 tickets.
No, because even at that point, eventually people would riot. Yeah, like that's insane. But
like there might be like a 20% bump, but it shouldn't be 20% no matter what the price of the ticket is.
Yeah, that's outrageous. But hey, good for those bands. I mean, just like when pro athletes sign these big contracts, somebody offers you that much money, you sign a contract and you take it. Like, I don't fault them for that, but at the same time, it's wild.
It's unfortunate because you make that comparison, but in a way, it's almost like if you were a sports owner and you paid one player a crap ton of money and didn't have any money left to pay anybody else.
Like the Reds.
Yeah, basically. Like now it's, you got to see the Rolling Stones, great, but now you don't have any money to see all these up and coming bands that are doing new things that are really cool. And they're the ones suffering at the end of the day.
I thought you were going to make the comparison to Bobby Bonilla. Like, you're just going to get a check every year and you haven't done anything relevant for 20 years.
That's fair too. That makes, I could totally see going that route.
Like, there's that where it's just like, he on Bobby Bonilla Day, he still gets his, whatever it is, $1 million+ dollars.
There's no reason why those ticket prices should increase. Like, you haven't done anything new. Like, you haven't, to me, early days of me going to concerts was cool because I got to see a bunch of bands that were no longer in style, and as a result, you got to see them relatively cheap with a bunch of bands on the bill. It's like every band should experience that.
Yeah,
I think that's just the natural descent from the top of the charts.
I would think so as well, but yeah, it's a wild scene out there in the concert world, but just interesting data. Another interesting story that I had that really is just more about the discussion that I didn't even realize was going to be as good as what it's going to be, because there was an article on Blabbermouth about the 9th Annual Metal Hall of Fame Gala that includes well-known people like Dimebag, Daryl, Ricky Rocket, and others, as you know. But as it turns out, there's a lot of people not in this Hall of Fame, and you did your investigative reporting. First off, I posted the article. Feel free to read through it and see about this inductee class that's coming up. But you found that it's a very interesting Hall of Fame that they have created for metal.
Well, what struck me as odd from the beginning is first the list of inductees, because it seems so all over the place. It's like, you have Doyle from the Misfits, you have Ricky Rocket from Poison, the band Dangerous Toys, great kind of, hair band era band. They were fine. Burton C. Bell, dude's classic from Fear Factory. Weird that they've been doing this Hall of Fame since 2017, and we're just now getting around to Dimebag Daryl. I thought that was a little interesting, especially when you dig deeper into the inductees. But the name Jeff Young kind of stuck out, because it's like, oh yeah, he was the guitarist in Megadeth for the So Far So Good So What album. That's great. He's kind of more well known at this point for he plays with David Ellefson, former bassist and co-founder of Megadeth. They play in like the Kings of Thrash, and I feel like Blabbermouth, probably more so than others, always seems to notice whenever he says anything disparaging towards Dave Mustaine, and they post a story about it. So it kind of comes off like he's always talking about it. May not really be the case, but it's what gets reported.
Sure.
As you get into the article, you notice that the event's going to be sponsored by, among the sponsors, the Ellefson Coffee Company, which is David Ellefson's coffee company.
Sure.
Which I'm kind of interested in checking out. I'm not a coffee drinker, but he does have the Roast in Peace medium blend. I mean,
it's a pretty good name.
Yeah, that could be pretty good. I don't know. But yeah, so you go into the inductees, and first right off the bat, like, Metallica's not there. No one from Metallica's there. Biggest metal band of all time.
For sure.
No matter how you feel about them. You can't really have a Metal Hall of Fame where they're not included, I would assume.
And clearly there's no requirement to be retired or anything like that.
No, there's no 5-year thing.
Right.
And they put you on the ballot.
Just make that clear that it's not that we're waiting to put them in. Like
there's no word as to whether or not, potential steroid use would inhibit your ability to be inducted. I don't think that's the case.
I would think performance-enhancing drugs would include you in the Metal Hall of Fame.
I would think you'd have to be on some sort of drugs to qualify at some point in your career.
For sure.
I don't know that, though. But, yeah, so, in that first class, the 2017 class, interesting, too, because they don't just limit it to bands or musicians. It's like you have Metal Blade Records as an inductee, the Rainbow Bar and Grill. Let's see. You have a couple legends who are no longer with us that were inducted, like Lemmy, Randy Rhoads, Dio. Makes all the sense in the world.
Sure.
But as I go through it further, I keep noticing that every year or so there'll be another former Megadeth member that was inducted. In 2018, Nick Menza was inducted. 2019, David Ellefson. 2020, Chris Poland. 2021, Marty Friedman. And now in 2025, Jeff Young. Oddly enough, no Dave Mustaine, who is clearly the mastermind and creative force behind Megadeth. So the whole thing just seems a little odd to me, but it's like any other Hall of Fame. It's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There are people that you question why they're there, and there are people you question why they aren't there. And I think this is pretty similar.
This is great when you were telling me these names, and really more about the names that aren't there than it is about the names that are there, because, I mean, who's to say if somebody's a Hall of Famer or not a Hall of Famer? But, yeah, I mean, Metallica right off the bat, they should have been in your first class.
And now if Metallica gets in...
They're going in after so many people.
They're going in after the band Anvil. So how do you feel about that? That's a little strange to me.
Bad. You feel bad about that.
Metallica, we finally got around to you, but we had to get Lizzie Hale in the Hall of Fame first. She.
And you made a good point before we went on the air, so I do want to note this. Like, we have no idea whether they go to these acts and say, hey, we want to put you in our Hall of Fame. They're like, nah, we're good. We don't want
Yeah,
to be part.
that's certainly possible.
Like, maybe they went or, is it a pay to be in the Hall of Fame? Is it like you said,
the Who's Who book from back in high school?
Where it's like, hey, if you'll guarantee, or it could be something like, hey, if you'll guarantee you'll move this many tickets or buy this much coffee, maybe we'll put you in. Like, I don't know. Yeah, the whole thing, the story itself was just like, okay, this is your Hall of Fame. It doesn't really matter, but it's good discussion. And then it was even better than I thought when you get into actually who's in and who's not in.
And there are a lot of great names in it. There's no question about that. But it does kind of bring up that conversation of, if you were setting up a Hall of Fame, what is your first year introductory inductees? Like, to me, there are the clear, if I'm setting up a Hall of Fame, these are the year one inductees.
If you don't have any kind of requirement on being retired or whatever, like how's the Big Four not in your first class?
Yeah,
like they are metal.
Yeah,
like you start there, and then you add like Dio because it's Dio, Lemmy. Like, you could fill out a first class with really almost no thought whatsoever.
And then you take it a step further and you say, well, how do you define metal for Metal Hall of Fame? Because, a lot of people think Black Sabbath were kind of the pioneers of heavy metal. They should be a year one band, too. They were huge.
Yeah, for sure. And, does Dio get in on his own? Does he go in with Rainbow? Does he go in with Sabbath?
He's like a 4-time inductee, I think. He goes in there with DX and the NWO. I mean, the guy's a legend.
So, yeah, that is an interesting discussion, is who would be in your... Especially if I said, like, you had to limit it to, like, 5 entries. Like,
yeah.
Then... Because a lot of times you'll see new Hall of Fames do that because you don't want to burn everybody up the first year, or what you don't want to do if you're trying to get people to attend or watch is have all these huge names in year one and everybody gets excited and shows up.
Year 2 through 5 just seem like the junior varsity crew.
It's like nobody wants to come and watch then, and then your Hall of Fame goes out of business because it's like, well, you put all the big names in, who's left? Like, so I also get that as well.
You do it like a tiered approach, like you have the A tier inductees, and you only have a limited amount of them, B tier, C tier. That way it ends up almost like a concert bill for your list of inductees each year.
You could do that. And the other thing I would do is every time you have inductees, I would put them on the committee. Like, hey, if Metallica's in, now you guys get a vote the next class we put in. And then you basically do that. So you're just constantly getting the pulse of your biggest stars as to what is metal. And that way you don't leave people out, in theory. Like,
maybe we'll get Pete Rose in. I don't know.
And maybe the only Hall of Fame he ever makes it in. But yeah, so... He's just interesting.
He's
like
in the WWE Hall of Fame, right?
That's true. I think he is in the celebrity wing of that. So, but he could make the Metal Hall of Fame. There's still time. So we'll see how that ends up working out. But just like I said, just a fun story, and it was more fun than I even realized when I put it out there. So check that out and get your tickets. I guess it's in January.
It should be a fun performance, if nothing else.
For sure. It's going to be in Anaheim, California, at the Grand Theater, and they're going to have a pre-party at the House of Blues in Anaheim. So if you're out west in the United States, check that out. So just kind of interesting. But that takes care of our news headlines for this week. We're going to get to our new music, of course. Before we do that, just a reminder, check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Of course, we've got our Discord, all kinds of good stuff. Check out our store as well. A lot of good stuff there, including all of our past episodes. A reminder, we'll be back on Thursday. This Thursday, we're talking all things wrestling, and it's going to be the best of 2024 pro wrestling. After last night's Saturday night's main event, I think we have a lot to even add to what has been an amazing 2024 in professional wrestling. You may have seen the best ending to WrestleMania of all time, all the way back in April. Feels like
best one since WrestleMania 9.
For sure, yes. But we'll dive into all that on Thursday, so make sure you join us 7 o'clock Eastern Time on the Nerdcast Empire. And then next Sunday, it is another episode of Music Weekly. We are on to the music of December what date is that? I knew I wasn't going to remember. December 6th. Yeah. December the 6th. So.
I haven't put that list together yet, so I totally wasn't sure either.
December the 6th. Hopefully, it'll be a solid week of music for December the 6th. But we'll be doing that next Sunday. 7 o'clock Eastern Time as well. Time to get to the new music. Of course, each and every week, Mike will go through a couple of different sources and pull all of the new album releases for a given date. Then he will pull songs and put them in a YouTube playlist, which I am about to share in the chat momentarily. We will also put that on the YouTube VOD as well. But we will go through and basically pick two bands each, two new albums that we can spotlight on this podcast. Again, always encourage you, check out the whole list. Everybody's music taste is different. There's a ton of stuff every week, sometimes more than 100 new songs on that list. So you may find something you like. If you do, check it out. And as we always say, support these bands, buy their albums, buy their merch, go see them live, keep music alive. And that is kind of the purpose of this podcast. But we're going to get to the new stuff. Both of us have picked two new albums that we think you should check out. So, Mike, we will let you bat lead off once again. What do you have for us for album number one?
Before getting into that, whenever we have these maybe slower than usual weeks, I can't help but think like maybe 2024 as a whole has just been a tremendous year. And these like slower weeks are more of what is natural. And maybe come 2025, we're going to struggle to find just the depth of quality that we found this year so far.
I hope not. I hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
I hope it's just been, because the one thing we do want to point out is this was the last week of a 5-week month. So this is the 5th week of releases for the month of November. So that could certainly play into it. Also, it was the day after U.S. Thanksgiving. So I don't know how that plays into record label. I mean, you would think maybe back in the day they would want a bunch of stuff coming out on Black Friday because everybody's going to be out shopping, but nobody carries physical media anymore. So that doesn't really help you at all. So I think that may have had, both of those things may have had a little bit to do with why there weren't quite as many top tier releases. But luckily we were able to find some good stuff that we can share with the podcast listeners this week.
Yeah, for sure. So going into my first pick, this is the first full-length album from this band from Helsinki, Finland. They are a metal band. They've so far released an EP and a single earlier this year, but here is their first full-length. The band is Ice Exiled, and the album is Reset the Sky. Yeah,
what I got to listen to this was good. Both of your choices this week, I haven't had the chance to take in the full album, but what I've heard already, I really did like.
Yeah, these guys, man, they have a very full and diverse sound of power metal with some harsh vocals, with some cello mixed in. It's a cornucopia, I suppose.
Love a cornucopia.
Absolutely, especially, end of November. It's really cool. Band is made up of Mika Matalainen on vocals, Oskari Kilpi on guitars and keyboards, Veikko Sajaniemi on cello and vocals, Roger Gottlieb on bass, Juha Savalainen on drums when they play live, and they have a studio drummer, Ville Numasalo.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Getting into the album, you start with the opening track, Open Fire, which kind of starts like your typical, maybe like a thrash metal opening where there's kind of the acoustic guitar, just very kind of calm before the storm. Picks into some heaviness, then has this wild like first verse with the singers kind of whispering it. Then it breaks into like epic power metal. As the song goes on, the cello gets more pronounced in it. It's just really cool and a great introduction to these guys' sound. I like harsh vocals when they're mixed well with other vocal styles. I feel like it's the different styles of singing are just different instruments that a band can use, and doing too much of the harsh just kind of, you lose some of the melody that I like in my metal. And I feel like these guys, they don't do it a lot, but when they do, it's when they need it. It serves the song, and it's really cool. You get a taste of that kind of for the first time on the second track, Civilization Zero, easy for me to say. But yeah, I mean, these guys, they're somewhat power metal, somewhat just straight heavy metal, a little bit of death. Their sound is complete. Standout tracks on the album include Open Fire, Civilization Zero, Reaper's Feast, Face the Night, and the song that I picked to listen to tonight. That song is Chained and Bound.
And a reminder before I hit the pause on our Roadcaster Pro 2 that, of course, if you are listening on the podcast network, wherever you get your podcast, you won't get to hear the audio clips, but you will if you're on Twitch or YouTube, unless one of those decides to mute it. But we always encourage you, be here live Sundays at 7. That's the one place you're guaranteed to get to hear the music clips. So let's check these guys out. Ice Exiled. This is from the album Reset the Sky. This is the 4th track off of that album, Chained and Bound. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. A little growling vocals coming in at the end there, but the music is certainly, again, love listening to these through the headphones. I feel like you get a different experience.
There's so much going on there.
It's very full, but it all works. Like sometimes you feel like, especially we get into some of these prog metal acts where they just want to show off that they can do all this crazy stuff, but it doesn't really fit together. Like these guys figured out how to make it all work.
It's complex, but it's not like a race.
Yeah.
Like they're not trying to jam as many notes for no good reason on every instrument possible at one time.
Yeah, there's clearly some thought and music theory behind the way they put it all together, which made it really a really good album. So definitely check those guys out. Ice Exiled with their new release, Reset the Sky. As always, you have 2 picks, and when you tell us about the second pick, I will pass along a little note from these guys. But tell us about pick number 2.
Yeah, kind of going into the second pick, I got to say it's been a pretty big year for new wave of British heavy metal bands. Just stuff that we've covered. We've seen new albums from Praying Mantis, Cloven Hoof, Blitzkrieg, Saxon, Demon. A lot of bands that are still kicking and still sounding really good, and my next pick is no exception. This is the latest album from the band Salem UK, which is kind of the renamed band Salem, whose formation goes all the way back to 1979. But yeah, this is Salem UK and their newest album, Outer Limits.
I want to shout these guys out. When I was looking up, I always look up all the bands on Facebook to try to tag them in our podcast so they know that we're talking about them, and hopefully can spread the word so that we can pick up some more followers along the way. And these guys immediately followed us back and just shared our link in their story. So we really appreciate that. And that's just really awesome. And anytime that happens, we're incredibly grateful. But
yeah, for sure.
But these guys are great. Like, this is an album everybody needs to be checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, the band dates back to 1979. They were originally active from 79 to 83. Disbanded, came back in 2010, and then disbanded again in 2017. As of 2019, 2 of the original members, the singer Simon Saxby and bassist Adrian Jenkinson, got back together and released a new album under the name Salem UK. Here we are 5 years removed from that, and we have their newest album, Outer Limits. Album artwork kind of features this creepy looking carnival front, and it kind of fits into both the prologue and the end of the album, little like festival type music. Really, really cool to start out and end that way. From there, you kind of just get into really solid new wave of British heavy metal music. Just straight up rock track, Rock You, really good way to get things going. Really dig Saxby's voice. I think it fits that style of music perfectly. And, if you're into that early 80s British heavy metal sound, then you're certainly going to love this. Like I mentioned before, it's just another album added to what's been a really impressive 2024 for this genre of music. I really hope a lot of people are finding it, because to me, that's one of the early metal movements that I kind of wish I'd been around and cognizant when they were around. This is certainly one of them. The Bay Area thrash scene and like the glam metal and on like the LA side, those are like things that I would have loved to have seen firsthand. But yeah, standout tracks on this album, you have Rock You, Red Light, Silverback, Overrider, Present from the Past, and the song that I chose to listen to, which is the title track to the album, Outer Limits.
Yeah, it's been great to see this. I don't even call it a resurgence, because I just feel like until this year, we haven't been checking out all the music that's out there, and I feel like whether it's been resurging for a while and we're just now seeing, finding out about it, or it really is, there's been an uptick in it this year, seeing all these new or continuing new wave of British heavy metal acts that are putting out new content and going on tour and continue to do well has been awesome to see. And these guys are no exception. Salem UK, from the album Outer Limits. This is the title track, as Mike said. Let's listen to a little bit of Outer Limits. Yeah, I mean, it's just great. And again, it's just another band that's brought so much different variety into the sound that it's not just another new wave of British heavy metal band. Like, these guys are clearly doing something different that makes them stand out from all the other great ones we've heard this year.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great to see there are still bands out here doing this, to be honest.
Yeah, it's awesome. And one of the things I'm really excited about this podcast is that we've been able to discover these bands.
Because you have to, because you're not going to turn on Octane on Sirius XM and hear this song.
Like, Sirius XM, like, you should give us a channel to program with all this music that we talk about on this podcast.
I just think they have kind of your Octane, which is like your modern radio rock, I suppose. You have Ozzy's Boneyard, you have the Hair Nation, you have all these different... They don't have anything that's just strict new wave of British heavy metal or European power metal. Like, I feel like those should be channels.
I don't know like what their online only channels look like, but I know like in the car you don't get any of that. So, but the exciting, these bands are still out there. Again, as we always say, support them, see them on tour, buy this new album from Salem UK, Outer Limits. Really excited about this sound. That, like I said, another one in the long line of bands that are out there doing this in 2024, which is super exciting. Really good stuff from them. I have two picks, as always, this week, and Frontiers did not release an album this week, so that basically took off one of the automatic picks that I would normally have, so I had to dig a little deeper this week, but I'm excited about the two bands that I have come up with for this week. The first one is a heavy metal band from Helsinki, Finland, that was founded in 2012. This is Fire Action with the album Until the Heat Dies. This is actually their first full-length album. They do have 3 EPs. I had to mention one of them because one of their EPs is called Fahrenhater.
Ha!
I couldn't pass that up. Oh, that's so great.
Genius.
Guitarist Yuri Vortama calls the album riffs, riffs, and riffs with awesome melodies on top. I don't think I really could describe it any better. It was probably the most AOR of anything on the list this week. But even then, there are some tracks on this album that are definitely harder than your traditional AOR, which really made for an intriguing listen all the way through. It wasn't boring. It was just really good heavy metal from Finland, and we love Finland, another one of those countries we've visited many times. So definitely check it out.
We've already visited them once today.
We have. We just love going back there over and over again. But standout tracks include Storm of Memories, Hard Days, Long Nights, that's spelled with a K, Survive, and the track we're going to listen to is No Drone Zone.
Topical.
So as it turns out, but actually it's not spelled with a K. I just mistyped it because I was so busy this weekend. That would be cool. I feel like there's it got to be a band that we have recovered in this podcast that would spell it that way.
Yeah.
But this is No Drone Zone from Fire Action off the album Until the Heat Dies. So let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, I wanted to play a little bit of the guitar part at the end of that chorus, but at points a little over the top. But overall, I thought it was a really solid metal album from Fire Action. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, this was definitely one of the stronger entries for this week. I didn't really notice it until hearing it just there. It was like the guitar soloing underneath the chorus in my left speaker. Like it was just, it was subtle, but man, it was going to town, and that was just really cool.
The headphone experience we talk about a ton on this podcast. It's when you listen to this music, if you can listen to it on headphones, it does a lot of times take it to a totally different level with the mixing. But yeah, check those guys out. Fire Action, my first pick for this week. As always, I have 2 picks. And our second band, just pull up my notes on this, we are headed to the United Kingdom. This is a rock power trio from Leicester in the United Kingdom, formed in 2011. This is SKAM, SKAM, all caps, with the album From the Depths. They consider themselves on the forefront of what they call the new wave of classic rock. So fair enough. That sounds like right up my alley, and indeed it was. This album has a classic rock feel, but in a modern way. You got elements of prog, metal, and kind of everything in between in this album. I mean, to me, there was some of this that even was, I heard a little like Foo Fighters-ish, like their early stuff in this album. Definitely kind of made some sense there. They're one of the groups that, on this list this week, I felt like some of the good stuff was also groups that were under the radar. But this kind of feels like an album that could be their big breakout into the mainstream. Really enjoyed this. Definitely check it out. Standout tracks include Rising Fever, Another Way Out, Fate of the Souls, and the title track, which is the track we're going to listen to, From the Depths. So let's check this out now. This is SKAM with the album From the Depths. This is the final track, which is 8 minutes and 39 seconds long, which is also From the Depths. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
As the silent days go by, where the sea is deep, in the void of the great beyond, deep down you sleep. We're crashing down within ourselves. Believe what you were told, if death is what you wish for. We're struggling for our lives. Hold your nerve and fight against the tide. Against the tide.
Yeah, just a really good rock album there, and like I said, that last track, even though it was 8 minutes long, it really did stand out. Your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, for a rock trio, their sound is so much bigger than what you'd expect would come out of 3 people. I mean, they don't necessarily sound like Rush, but it's a similar product where it's like you feel like there's a lot more people producing what you're hearing. Whereas, there are bands out there that they're a trio and they sound like a trio, but yeah, these guys got a big sound and definitely something I want to listen to more.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely check out SKAM From the Depths, the power trio from the United Kingdom, bringing us my second pick for this week. That takes care of our new music for the week. It is time to head into the vault, where Mike and I will each give you an album you need to check out. And Mike, of course, is going through the Wikipedia list of all of the glam metal bands, and he has crossed the halfway point a couple weeks ago. We are on to the ever-popular letter Q for this week, which really didn't leave you a whole lot of choices for this week.
Yeah, I apparently Queen and Queensryche were neither one considered glam metal. So, what are you going to do? Yeah, there were only 2 choices. The bands Quiet Riot and the Choir Boys. Reading into the Choir Boys, I just didn't think that was the direction I wanted to run.
Good call.
So, Quiet Riot, obviously legendary band, one of the earliest commercially super successful heavy metal bands. I mean, depending on your definition of heavy metal, they were the first to have a #1 album. So I figured there was probably something of interest there. Looking into their discography, I was trying to think of where I wanted to attack it, because obviously, you have kind of their commercially important albums, Condition Critical, Metal Health, but I thought it'd be more interesting since that their classic lead singer Kevin Dubrow was kind of a interesting dude, and at one point they did fire him. I thought it'd be kind of neat to go into the album that he wasn't a part of. So for my vault choice this week, we are going to 1988 for Quiet Riot's sixth studio album. The album is simply just called QR.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've not had the chance to listen to this all the way through because just busy weekend, but kind of curious to get your thoughts on this album because obviously Quiet Riot has such a unique sound coming from their singer, and I'm curious as to what it sounded like without Dubrow there.
Yeah, Kevin Dubrow had a very distinct voice, presence. I mean, so much when you think of Quiet Riot, you picture him.
Yeah, for sure.
For better or worse. Years ago, I got their greatest hits. And, at the time, there were the songs I knew already, like Come On, Feel the Noise, Bang Your Head, Mama, We're All Crazy Now. But, like, a little over halfway through the album, I start hearing these songs that I'm like, what is that? I'm not familiar with these. That doesn't sound like the same band. It certainly doesn't sound like Kevin Dubrow singing. And that's where this comes in. So, just kind of going back in time a bit, you had 1983's Metal Health with Come On Feel the Noise, Slick Black Cadillac, 84's Condition Critical with Mama We're All Crazy Now. Kevin Dubrow was fired before the recording of this album, though. Kind of interesting story there. They brought in Paul Shortino of Rough Cut to be the singer, but Kevin Dubrow is pretty notorious for bad-mouthing other bands and just generally not getting along, I think, with the press, too. He was just very irritable, maybe corrosive kind of dude, I suppose. But yeah, like, his bad-mouthing of other bands even led to, at one point, Rudy Sarzo getting punched in the face by Ozzy Osbourne because Dubrow had been bad-mouthing Ozzy, of all people.
Wow.
Yeah, so the label and the band kind of decided, hey, we need to fire this guy because it's starting to impact our ability to function because you have all these other bands that we're wanting to go on tour with that don't like us. We can't have that, obviously.
For sure.
So as you kind of look at the Wikipedia page, you see that there were a lot of people in the media that were pretty excited about this album, mainly probably because they didn't like Kevin Dubrow. Gary Blokus of The Morning Call wrote, "Now that Dubrow is gone, Quiet Riot is finally able to showcase its true talent," as well as saying, "Dubrow's departure was a gift for this band." John Evasevic of the Pittsburgh Press wrote, "Thankfully Gone with Dubrow are the dopey teen anthems. Although it sounds tentative at spots, on the whole, it is filled with smart, mature, heavy rock," in reference to this album.
Sounds like these movie reviewers who are going to tell you that this this critically acclaimed movie is something you need to go see when you know it's just not.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You look at the cover art and the change in sound, and this was 1988. So, like, in a way, it almost felt like maybe they were ahead of the curve in trying to switch things up prematurely because we're still in the height of that, pop metal era. But a few years later, this might have been a smart move if it happened then.
For sure.
Billboard was less favorable, saying the lineup changes didn't improve the band and that Quiet Riot was still a run-of-the-mill metal band, long on heavy metal cliches and short on originality. Some of the other reviews talked about Shortino's vocals, comparing them to names like Robert Plant, David Coverdale, and even Steven Tyler, which the dude definitely has a different thing to his voice. He's a really good singer, but if you picked up a Quiet Riot album and heard him and what the music they were playing to these songs, you wouldn't think it was Quiet Riot. Like, it is nowhere near Metal Health or, Come On, Feel the Noise. Having gone into a bunch of albums kind of around the same era, this album's fine, but I don't know if it would have really stood out compared to some of the other things that I reviewed, even just going through the alphabet of the glam metal band starting at the letter A. Certainly feels more mature than Quiet Riot. But I think Kevin Dubrow was so much their identity. You're not going to come to Quiet Riot looking for more blues rock, more mature sound, but that's kind of what it is. Like, there's a reason they compare him to Robert Plant and David Coverdale and Steven Tyler. It's like, it's very much more a stripped down bluesy, songs aren't bad. I mean, Standout tracks on the album: "Stay With Me Tonight," "Calling the Shots," "King of the Hill," "The Joker." All solid songs, but probably weren't going to get over too well for their fans. Who, Kevin Dubrow he had a sound to him, and this wasn't that sound.
All music certainly wasn't very kind to the band. They were fine with Shortino. He sounds competent, but overall he lacks the general charisma of Dubrow. The real problem with the album, however, is the songs themselves, which are loaded with unmemorable lyrics and melodies. Performances on QR make the album horribly faceless. The record shows a once popular rock group trying to retain their glory days with a handful of disgustingly generic material. That is
That's harsh.
That is harsh. What is interesting is it's always interesting to go down the rabbit hole of Wikipedia. You get into Paul Shortino, and it mentions that as a solo artist, he wrote and performed the song Eggman as the theme for Dr. Eggman and Sonic Adventure 2 for Sega.
Oh, wow.
Which I did not know.
That's pretty cool.
He was also Duke Fame in the film This Is Spinal Tap. So
I didn't know that either.
I didn't either. So
that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, again, the dude can sing.
Yeah.
Their band was talented. Sometimes it just doesn't work when you change up the lead singer as much as I think everybody hoped it would, because that solves your problem of our lead singer's out there causing us to get in fist fights. What are we going to do about it? But, unfortunately, when you've kind of already made it like Quiet Riot had and you have an identity, it's going to be really hard unless the next guy comes in and you're just able to get that hit in the first album that just kind of takes you back to the top again. Then people will generally go along for the ride, but it doesn't sound like this album really gave them that.
No, and I don't know if this is just kind of the product too of, they had some hit songs, but I don't know if they had the legs to keep it going beyond that. I mean, really, Mama We're All Crazy Now cover song, Come On Feel the Noise cover song. They had Bang Your Head, Metal Health, Slick Black Cadillac. I don't know how many hit original songs they had in the tank to begin with.
Maybe they should have just released a cover album with the new guy, and maybe a couple of those would have hit, and then they would have been like, "Oh, everything's good, like we're good." But obviously, enjoy Quiet Riot. Would kind of, just morbid curiosity, kind of want to check this album out to see.
It's not bad. There's nothing wrong with the album. Like, I do get the comments that it's unmemorable.
Yeah.
I mean, so many of these albums, like when you listen to them, you'll hear that song where you're like, "Oh yeah, that one, that's huge. That's the song." And even with this one, it's like, the single on it, "Stay With Me Tonight," I think it was. Like, it's fine, but I don't hear single when I hear that. Like, it's just an okay song. Like, it's nothing wrong with it, but not single material, I don't think.
And obviously that's what you need when you, especially in that era, you had to have something that was radio friendly that was going to get you on the radio. So
there was so much competition by 1988.
Yeah, it was definitely the height of that type of music for sure.
Yeah.
And, you come in with something that's unmemorable and it's probably not going to do very well.
No.
But I encourage you to check it out. Quiet Riot, obviously, great. And just check this album out and see what you think of QR, which came out in 1988. Getting to my vault pick, as we've talked about for many, many, many weeks, I've been going through year by year and picking a classic album, and we've gotten to the later years and have picked several to kind of talk about briefly before we get to the vault pick. Started in 1969, many weeks ago. We are up to the year 2008 now, and a few honorable mentions for 2008 before we get to the pick. One that's unfortunately kind of a somber album release in 2008 was the album out of Japan, Zard, Request Best Beautiful Memory, was basically put together by their fans after the death of their lead singer, Izumi Sakai, in 2007. They basically requested that fans would vote on songs that they would like to see included in this best of that came out in 2008. And then they basically put out a 2-disc collection in 2008. So Zard was obviously amazing, and just obviously a sad way for it all to end.
Yeah.
But that came out in 2008. The Offspring, Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace came out in 2008. Kind of them jumping back on the radio again with Hammerhead and You're Gonna Go Far, Kid. among other hits off of that album, but always a fan of the Offspring.
That was Bob Rock, wasn't it?
I believe it was, right? Yes, it was Bob Rock. So that was their ticket to more hits. Great to see from those guys. The Sound of Madness from Shinedown came out in 2008. I can't say I'm a huge Shinedown fan, but you had Devour on that album. You had Second Chance. Those were both really...
As far as like hard rock bands of that era, I think they're one of the better ones.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I say I'm not a fan. I just don't really haven't listened to a lot of their catalog. But no, those were both really good songs. Devour was a little more upbeat. Second Chance a little slower, but both were huge hits. This is kind of one of those albums I'd kind of like to go back and listen to the whole thing and see what their off tracks sound like. They had 6 singles off of that album, so good stuff. From
Diamond Eyes, great song.
Yeah, very true. From Shinedown from 2008. Saudades de Rock, which is an album I want to check out, so I included on here, was the 5th album by the band Extreme, which came out in 2008. Of course, saudades is a Portuguese word for like yearnings or memories. This is an album I just need to listen to. I've heard a couple of songs off of it. They probably played a couple songs off of it at the concert we went to.
Yeah.
But I need to listen to the whole thing. But I did want to mention it because Extreme, as much as I've always liked them, after having seen them live, I just have a totally different appreciation for them. I think they're amazing. And I can't stress enough, if you get the chance to see them live in 2024, 2025, you need to go see them live. I would 100% go see them again. It's definitely worth it. Also, we mentioned last week the album Snakes and Arrows came out from Rush. 2008 was their live version of that, which got turned into CD, DVD, which eventually would make its way to theaters, in fact. So it's definitely, if you're a fan of Rush, you've probably owned this 10 times. But if you maybe a casual fan, you should definitely check this out. Really good stuff from them in 2008. Asian Kung Fu Generation comes in from Japan with World in 2008. Probably most notable off of this recently was the song Rock and Roll Morning Light Falls on You, which was covered in Bocchi the Rock, kind of a crossover their anime stuff. But these guys are good. That was the 3rd single off of that album. And that gets us to the album I chose from the band Edguy. We've talked a lot about these bands from that era that you got me into specifically. Tinnitus Sanctus was their 8th album. And I don't know how many times I've listened to this album. Probably more times than is even possible to count at this point. Both straight through and then just it continues to pop up on my iPod. I don't know that there's a bad track on this. Even the goofy bonus track at the end, Aren't You a Little Pervert Too, which is just it's so ridiculous. But it shows you, like, as we've talked about with some of their past tracks, this is a band that likes to have a good time. And that's always kind of been the vibe that their music gave off, which made them so much fun to listen to. Their music was generally uplifting and fun. The rest of the album is great. Ministry of Saints starts it off. Sex, Fire, Religion, The Pride of Creation, 9 Lives, Wake Up Dreaming Black's a great song. Dragonfly, Thorn Without a Rose, 929, Speedhoven, which is a great speed metal song. Dead or Rock, which honestly, like, when I hear Dead or Rock, like, I almost think that could have been the lead-off track off of this album. Like, it just hasn't. Like, if you saw them in concert and they opened with that, it would make a lot of sense. They put it at the end, basically, before their kind of silly track. You could also get a bonus CD, which included a live concert from Los Angeles, but we've talked a ton about these guys. Obviously, probably not going to ever get any more Edguy albums, which is fine. Like, but, it's hard to not talk about their albums when they come up because they're just so good, and everybody should definitely check this one out. You like I said, you got me into this album originally, so what are your thoughts on this one specifically?
Yeah, I mean, another great album. I think we firmly reached the point where they were kind of a hard rock band, but that was fine.
Yeah.
He had Avantasia off doing more of the epic power metal, conceptual stuff, which is also great. Wake Up Dreaming Black, 929, Speedhoven, all great songs. It's a shame that we don't see any new Edguy on the horizon. Like I mentioned before, though, the new Avantasia song sounds like Edguy, so
Yeah.
which is great because looking at the when he posted it about it on Facebook, man, the people just going nuts in the comments about it not sounding like Avantasia and just kind of being down on it. And like, I don't know who handles his social media, but man, the Avantasia Facebook page was responding to like every comment.
Hopefully that intern is getting paid well.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with the song. If you only like Avantasia and not Edguy, you may not be super into it, but liking both,
That works, yeah. And I guess the only thing you could wonder is if you're not a fan of, kind of like you said, like Edguy had become really a hard rock band by the time they got to this album. If you're concerned that Avantasia is going to head that direction now, I could see where it's like, okay, like I like this side of what you do. It's kind of like the whole Stone Sour Slipknot debate.
Yeah.
Like, as we mentioned before, I got into Stone Sour first, and then I got into Slipknot. It wasn't maybe the other way around. There's probably a little bit of that here too.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of looking at the comments on Facebook for it. It's kind of funny. Yeah, new music from either one. I'll take it regardless. And I'm sure, just based on how Avantasia works and all the different guest musicians they get in to work on it, it's still going to have a lot of that crazy bombast too. I don't think that's going away. I think when that album does come out and we get a chance to listen to it, the only thing we'll wonder is maybe why he chose to run with Creepshow as the first single and first kind of taste that he gave people, because I feel like you might end up feeling like that felt like a swerve, like that wasn't exactly...
This is not going to be a whole new album of Edguy songs.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe people will feel like that's what's coming. And maybe that's considered the backlash.
And I think that's the case. It's like, hey, what are you doing to us here?
So we'll see. I mean, I'm curious. If it's a whole album of Edguy songs, I'll be happy. I don't know if the Avantasia people will be happy, but I will certainly enjoy that. I'll enjoy it regardless. But again, love their Edguy stuff. Tobias Sammet is just a legend, and excited to see as they continue on with Avantasia. And again, I hope someday I get to see them perform live in some form or fashion.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see if that ever happens, if they make their way over to the States at some point, or I go overseas. I don't know. Obviously, 2008, I don't know how many great albums there were. There were a lot of albums in 2008. There's always a few that slipped through the cracks, and some that are kind of albums that you had on your list. So what did you have on your list that I missed out on 2008?
Yeah, all in all, it wasn't a bad year. We had the album Overcome from All That Remains, had their hit 2 weeks on it, Undone. Cover of Nevermore's Believe in Nothing on that too, which is really cool. We had Bullet for My Valentine's album, Scream, Aim, Fire, with the title track, with Hearts Burst into Fire, Waking the Demon, really, really cool song and video. Guns N' Roses, Chinese Democracy came out in 2008.
I was going to put that on my list, but I figured you would talk about it.
Yeah, it was never going to live up to the expectations that were set, which is unfortunate because it actually was a pretty good album.
Yeah.
The title track was really good. You had Shackler's Revenge, Better, Catcher in the Rye. Worth listening to, just so you know what it was, even if maybe you weren't a big fan of theirs.
I think the one thing I'll say about it, well, two things. You're right. It was not a bad album. Number two, it made me kind of depressed that it has been 16 years since that came out.
Yeah.
And it's like, it feels like it was something that just finally happened like 3 or 4 years ago. Like, no, that was 2008 when that finally came out. Like, that makes me depressed that it's been that long.
I didn't really think about it at the time, but it's like, that being 2008 when it came out, that's 16 years ago, right? So,
yeah. How far away from, like...
Let's see. Discography. Make sure I get this right. Let's see here. Yeah, before that, they had the Spaghetti Incident, which wasn't even a full album, I don't think. That came out in 93. Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 each came out in 1991. So we're talking, 17 years?
It's close. It's almost as many years since Chinese Democracy came out as it was waiting for it to come out.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
We are old.
Talking about huge hard rock metal bands. Metallica released Death Magnetic in 2008.
Yeah.
Definitely more of a return to what people would consider to be their form. Tracks like That Was Just Your Life, The End of the Line, All Nightmare Long, My Apocalypse. Really good album. People should definitely check it out if you have any interest in Metallica. The band Poison Black released A Dead Heavy Day with tracks like Diane, Left Behind, Bear the Cross, Human Compost. Great title. Another classic thrash band, Testament, released The Formation of Damnation. Really cool album of theirs. Songs like More Than Meets the Eye, The Evil Has Landed, and Henchman Ride. One of my favorite albums of all time came out. The album Shogun by the band Trivium.
Yeah.
Songs like Kirste Gomen, Down from the Sky, Throes of Perdition, The Calamity, Shogun. Outstanding album. Everyone should go and buy it and listen to it numerous times. We mentioned them just a couple minutes ago. Avantasia released The Scarecrow. Songs like Twisted Mind, The Scarecrow, Another Angel Down, Cry Just a Little, Lost in Space. Everything that they do is good, so,
Interesting. We had that come out the same year as the Edguy album.
Yeah, strange how that works. But yeah, that was really the majority of it for 2008.
Yeah, I knew you would touch on the Trivium album. I knew that was one of your big ones, so
Yeah,
I figured
so
I'd just
good.
leave that for you. But 2008, another great year. Next week, we're going to talk about 2009, and you'll be up to R for your glam band, so hopefully
it's gotta be
better than Q. We'll have to tune in next week to find out who Mike chooses for his glam band for next week. But that is going to wrap things up for another episode of Music Weekly. It's been another great week of music. We appreciate everybody joining us. We appreciate, again, shout out to Salem UK for commenting, sharing our post and our link. We really appreciate that. Anytime any of the bands can share our content, or anybody that listens, if you share our content, we are greatly appreciated. It's anything as far as just sharing word of mouth, following us. Doesn't cost a dime, but it can be a huge help to us. We really appreciate that. A big thanks to everybody who listened. A big thanks to Chris for holding down the chat. Big thanks to Mike, as always, for putting all this together. We'll be back on Thursday, the Best of Pro Wrestling 2024, as we're kind of wrapping up the year. We went through the Best of Video Games last Thursday. We'll do Best of Pro Wrestling this Thursday. Looking very much forward to that. And, of course, next Sunday, the next episode of Music Weekly with the music from December the 6th, as we get into the final month of 2024. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast. Big thanks to you, the listener. No matter where you're hearing us, we appreciate you on the Nerdcast Empire. That's going to wrap things up for the entire crew. I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.